My son said I eat but don't help, so I quietly sold the house they lived in for 2.8 matmers. What happened next? A shocking family reunion that changed everything. The garden was buzzing with polite laughter, clinking glasses, and small talk about new cars and vacations. Tony had outdone himself, caviar, crystal flutes, a string quartet in the corner, but nothing in that setting could mask the tension beneath his carefully curated smile. I watched from the porch, hands folded, observing the scene that was supposed to celebrate his engagement. Bethany was radiant, the kind of picture-perfect glow only a young woman deeply in love can carry. She didn't know yet, but tonight was about to change everything. "I was thinking Amalfi," Bethany said, swirling her champagne. "September next year, something intimate, but elegant." Intimate. I laughed softly to myself. 200 guests, intimate, my foot. Tony nodded, absorbed in his own vanity. That's when I heard it. A deep diesel rumble growing louder by the second. Air brakes hissed, tires screeched, unmistakable. A moving truck pulled to a stop directly in front of the house. The laughter tapered off. Guests craned their necks. Tony's brow furrowed as he stepped toward the window. "What the—" he muttered, glass in hand, stepping onto the front porch. The truck driver, a towering man with a clipboard and his crew of burly movers, looked equally confused. "Sir, we're here for the Romano job, 1247 Stockton Street?" Tony's face twisted. "I didn't hire anyone. This must be a mistake." Rodriguez, the crew chief, adjusted his hat. "Sir, instructions are clear. Pack and move everything in the house. Settlement tomorrow. New owners want to walk through at noon." I stepped onto the porch. "I did," Tony froze. His glass trembled. Guests shifted, whispering. Bethany's hand flew to her mouth. Murmurs of confusion swept through the garden. "Dad, what's going on?" "Sir," Rodriguez said, uncomfortable, "we have legal instructions to proceed. Full house clearance. Settlement?" Tony's voice cracked. "What settlement?" I descended the steps slowly, deliberately, until I was face to face with my son in front of 43 witnesses. Family, friends, business associates, and half the San Francisco social elite. "I sold the house, son," I said. Silence. The kind that presses in from all sides. "Someone's champagne glass shattered on the patio." "You what?" Tony's voice was thin. "Sold it. April 2nd, Henderson's from New York, hedge fund family. They take possession tomorrow." Tony's face cycled through disbelief, panic, then rage. Bethany clutched his arm, stunned. "Dad, that's impossible." "You can't just—" "You live here rent-free," I corrected. "Big difference." William Crawford, Bethany's father, stepped forward, pale. "Yeppe, there's been a mistake." "Tony and Bethany—" I raised a hand. "Their future." Interesting concept. 43 people, all pillars of this city, all enjoying my hospitality for years, while treating me like I contributed nothing. "Tell me, Mr. Crawford, what future exactly?" "The one where my son continues living off me while pretending I add nothing of value?" Tony's shoulders tensed. A few guests edged back, sensing a storm. "Dad, please—" "Not here," he whispered. "When then, Tony? Would you like to discuss how you spent the last 2 years treating me like hired help in my own house?" The quiet stretched. I smiled thinly. "Not done yet." I walked to the side gate and flung it open. "Marco, Sophia, Pepe, Lucia, come meet my son's friends." 4 young Italians stepped into the backyard. Simple elegance, quiet dignity, eyes sharp, posture proud. Guests froze, unsure how to react. Marco stepped forward. "You must be Antonio." "I am Marco Romano, your cousin from Naples." "Uncle Yeppe has told us about you." Tony's smile faltered, stiff as a mask. These are your family?" "Yes," I announced, loud enough for every guest. "The Romano cousins from Italy, brought here with the money from selling this house." Sophia's English was deliberate. "Mr. Tony, your father—" "He gave us everything. A chance at life in America." Color drained from Tony's face. "Not only had I sold his house, but I had brought people into his world who embodied every principle he had tried to escape." Bethany tugged at his sleeve. "Tony, what is he talking about?" "No more private conversation, son," I said. "They deserve to know who they've been socializing with. All these years, you've dismissed me as worthless. Now let's see how you feel about real value." Lucia stepped forward, carrying a portfolio. "Uncle Yeppe, he works so hard." We see it, we remember it. Every day, 16 hours for 40 years. She opened the case to reveal photographs of the restaurant, awards, family milestones, proof of a lifetime spent building, nurturing, feeding a city, while unappreciated by the son who lived rent-free under his roof. Tony's hand twitched. His voice caught. "Dad," I smiled, holding up the photos. "This house, bought in 1985 for $89,000, every payment, every renovation, every bit of furniture, my money. Every bit of effort. And this," I gestured to the young Italians, "this is the future your father chose to create when you decided to be ashamed of your own blood," the crowd murmured. Bethany's eyes widened. Tony's world, built on denial and arrogance, began to crumble in slow motion. Tony stood frozen, staring at the four cousins who had stepped into his life from a world he had tried to ignore. Marco, Sofia, Pepe, and Lucia, his real family, the people who carried the Romano legacy he had disdained, all facing him with calm, unwavering eyes. The whispers and gasps of the guests filled the garden, but I barely noticed them. This was bigger than embarrassment. This was truth laid bare in front of everyone who mattered in Tony's carefully curated social orbit. "Mr. Tony," Marco said, his voice steady, "you owe nothing to anyone who treats their father with disrespect." Tony swallowed hard. These are all my family?" His voice cracked, barely audible over the murmurs. "Yes," I repeated, loud enough for the entire backyard. "And I brought them here with the money from selling the house." Every penny went to them: legal fees, travel, housing, education, business startup funds. $2,850,000. The crowd fell silent, processing the revelation. Bethany's hand was still pressed to her mouth. She glanced at Tony with disbelief and sorrow, realizing the man she thought she knew had no idea who he was really standing next to. Sophia pulled out a folder, carefully showing the guests photographs from our family restaurant in Naples, spanning 4 generations. "This," she said, "is our history. Hard work, dedication, family." I held the photos high. "Your great-grandfather started with a pushcart in Naples. Your grandfather expanded it to a restaurant. I brought the name to America and made it thrive enough to send you to Stanford, to Harvard Law. And now my cousins continue the tradition, honoring the family name instead of hiding from it." Tony's face turned from confusion to panic. Every gesture, every smirk he had cultivated over years of pretending to be above his origins, faltered. Bethany shook her head, speechless. William Crawford, her father, glanced at me and whispered something about irregularity and propriety. I ignored him. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, addressing the crowd, "my son has spent years telling people I contribute nothing valuable. He never thanked me, never offered to help, never acknowledged the sacrifices behind this home, this life, this city I helped feed and nurture. Today, he sees what value really means." Lucia stepped forward, holding a portfolio filled with documents and photos of all her cousin's accomplishments since arriving in America. Marco had opened a small restaurant. Sophia graduated with honors in nursing. Pepe ran a consulting business, and Lucia was already featured in a local gallery for her art, celebrating our heritage. Each success story was tied directly to the foundation Tony had scorned. The guests began murmuring, connecting the dots, realizing that the man they had admired was now revealed to be shallow and ungrateful. Tony's law partners shifted uneasily. His reputation, carefully cultivated over decades of social maneuvering, was crumbling. Tony's voice finally emerged, trembling. "Dad, you can't be serious. That was my inheritance, my future." I shook my head, smiling faintly. "Your future?" "Son, you threw away your future the moment you decided to be ashamed of the man who gave you everything." Marco stepped forward, eyes locked on Tony. "With respect, Antonio, you had no expectations. You owe nothing to those who show disrespect." Bethany's voice quavered. "Tony, tell them this is some kind of misunderstanding." Tony couldn't speak. His ego, his sense of control, his vision of success, it all evaporated in front of 43 witnesses. The irony was delicious. The man who had prided himself on wealth and prestige was humbled by authenticity and hard work, qualities he had derided. I continued, turning to the guests. "This house was bought in 1985 for $89,000. Every mortgage payment, every improvement, every stick of furniture, my earnings, my effort. Romano's Kitchen on Columbus Avenue, 45 years feeding the city, 32 employees, James Beard Award nomination in 2003. But Tony was embarrassed by it all. He hid the family photos, called my work building maintenance. Today, he sees the truth. Lucia opened her portfolio again. $250,000. Every penny went to bring my cousins here, to give them life in America. Legal fees, travel, housing, education, business. All of it. Tony's shoulders slumped. Bethany's hand trembled as she removed her engagement ring from her finger, placing it carefully on the patio table. The sparkle of the $47,000 ring was lost in the weight of reality settling over her and everyone present. She couldn't marry someone who treated his own father this way. Tony's world had imploded. Guests were leaving, whispering, shaking their heads. His managing partner walked off. 2 judges excused themselves politely, all sensing that nothing in Tony's controlled life would ever feel normal. Again, I stepped back and watched as my real family, the cousins who had flown across the ocean with dreams and gratitude, interacted with the world Tony had ignored. Marco extended his hand professionally. Sophia smiled. Pepe nodded. Lucia held her art portfolio with pride. They were elegance, hard work, and dignity incarnate, traits Tony had tried to discard. And Tony? He stood in his expensive suit, utterly alone, facing the consequences of underestimating his father, dismissing his heritage, and failing to honor his family. By the time the moving truck pulled away late that night, Tony was standing alone in the empty house, the walls echoing with memories he had never truly appreciated. Every family photo removed, every piece of furniture gone, the home he had taken for granted, now nothing more than an empty shell. "Where am I supposed to go?" he asked, his voice small, almost lost in the cavernous living room. "That's not my problem anymore, son," I said, matter of fact. Rodriguez, the crew chief, handed me the final paperwork, and I added a generous bonus for working late. The Hendersons, the new owners, were thrilled to move in the next morning. Nice family. 3 kids, 2 dogs. People who will actually live here instead of treating it like a museum. Tony's phone buzzed incessantly. Texts, social media notifications, video clips of the night's events circulating online. 47,000 views and climbing. Engagement party meltdown, Italian justice. The irony was brutal. His carefully curated social persona was being dismantled by strangers, his reputation collapsing in real time. Bethany's friends had filmed everything, and the clips were spreading like wildfire. Tony's law partners, clients, even casual acquaintances, everyone now witnessed the consequences of his arrogance and ingratitude. Over the following days, the fallout continued. Tony lost his position at Morrison Whitfield and Associates 3 days later. Harold Morrison cited conduct unbecoming of the firm's values and damage to professional reputation. Tony moved to a smaller personal injury firm, earning about 60% of his former salary. Bethany ended the engagement permanently after her parents threatened to cut her off if she married a man who had treated his father with such disdain. She is now dating a tech executive who shares her values and sense of integrity. Tony tried to reconcile months later, showing up at Marco's new restaurant during a busy dinner service. He looked different, humbled, perhaps older, with the kind of tired that only comes from facing the consequences of one's choices. "Dad," he said quietly, "I understand what you were trying to teach me." "Do you?" I asked. "You threw away everything that mattered for people who never really cared about you." He nodded, the weight of his mistakes evident. "Is there any way? Could we maybe try again?" I looked around at the restaurant filled with my true family, Marco teaching a cooking class with the copper pasta machine I had brought from Italy, Sophia working with patients at UCSF, Pepe consulting for Italian companies, Lucia's artwork displayed proudly. A tangible, authentic life built from gratitude, respect, and hard work. Then I turned to Tony. "You're always welcome at Sunday dinner. But you come as yourself, not Tony Roman. You come ready to remember where you came from. If you can't, you stay lost." Tony left without ordering anything. I haven't seen him since, but Marco keeps a seat saved just in case he ever chooses to be present, truly present, with us. Family isn't just blood, it's shared values, respect, and commitment. Life returned to its rhythm. My cousins thriving in America call every Sunday, sharing real conversations, dreams, and decisions. They treat me like family, and I reciprocate. The restaurant flourishes. Sophia's nursing career is progressing beautifully. Pepe's consulting business is growing steadily. Lucia's art is recognized and celebrated. We have built something authentic, honoring our heritage and the sacrifices that brought us here. Tony, however, remains a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when entitlement overshadows gratitude, when pride blinds one to the value of the people who truly matter. Social media and public exposure compounded his lessons. The video went viral, the story covered in local media, and everyone who witnessed the party now understood the consequences of disrespect and ingratitude. Months later, reflecting on that day, I realized the quiet satisfaction wasn't revenge. It was restoration. Restoring what should have been respected all along, giving opportunities to those who valued family, work, and heritage. Tony had choices to make, but my responsibility was to those who would honor the family name, not to someone who had chosen shame over gratitude. As for me, I watched my real family thrive, building a legacy rooted in respect and hard work, filled with laughter, pride, and connection. Tony's absence was noticeable, but it served as a reminder: character matters more than appearances, humility more than entitlement, and integrity far more than a title or bank balance. Family isn't just blood. Family is who shows up, who contributes, who carries the legacy forward with pride and respect. That day I sold a house, but I restored a family, built a future for the cousins who deserved it, and finally found peace knowing that everything I worked for would be honored, not hidden, not disrespected, and not taken for granted ever again.